Chetna, I hope the screen is visible. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, very much so. You can do it full screen if you want, and we can also start if you're comfortable.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely. Yes.
okay, so I'll just introduce everyone
Yeah.
to the speakers and the discussant. Hello, everyone. Uh, just a moment. We have people in the waiting room. I'll admit them all. Yes. Hello, everyone. I, Chetna Rani, welcome you all on behalf of the Baithak. The Dark began in 2023 as a book review journal publishing original reviews across disciplines and genres. From the start, we sought to reimagine the form of the book review itself, encouraging writing that moves beyond summary to engage deeply, reflectively, and creatively with the world a book opens up. Over time, we grew into a biannual academic journal that now includes reviews, explainers, commentaries, and research essays. Each issue is built around a central theme, bringing together diverse voices that explore the intersections across social sciences. The Dark Baithak is our humble attempt to huddle around a small gathering of scholars, writers, and students from different fields to present ideas and initiate dialogue, bringing critical conversations to life. Our session today is titled From Palaces to Parliament, Royal Women and the Politics of Representation in India. Our speaker today is Dr. Anushree, who is a visiting faculty of political science at the School of Liberal Arts, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University, New Delhi. Her doctoral thesis was on political dynasties in electoral politics, case studies of MP and Rajasthan from the Center of Political Studies, JNU. A JRF holder, she was awarded the ICSSR Doctoral Fellowship during her PhD. She also holds a degree in mass communication and was conferred the ZTV Award for Academic Excellence at the Indian Institute of Mass Communication. Our discussant for today is Sneha Roy, a PhD researcher at the Geneva Graduate Institute at the Department of International Relations and Political Science. I welcome you all. For Dr. Anushree and Sneha, the format is usually that the speakers shares their ideas, the presentation for 25 to 30 minutes. Then we move on to the discussant who can ask questions, ideas, thoughts, and then you can answer, take on questions from the participants, and that's how we usually go. So, Dr. Anushree, if you're comfortable, we can start.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much, Dark, for the opportunity, Jigyasa, and everyone around. Chetna, Sanjukta, thank you so much for the opportunity. And so today, in fact, I was thinking of speaking so much, and I decided on making a PPT, but I ended up just working on my already existing PPT because there's so much to speak on this topic. And yesterday, the election results of Bihar Assembly, Legislative Assembly was declared, and I was excited to see how women voter turnout outnumbered men. Almost 73% women voted as compared to around 62% men voting. So from where have we moved? So in the first Lok Sabha elections, if you look at the first Lok Sabha elections, there were around 22% women voters. I'm so sorry, 22 women in the Lok Sabha. And now in the 18th Lok Sabha, you have 74 women. And the 106th Constitutional Amendment Act provides for 33% reservation for women. But look at the journey so far with increased women voter turnout and increased number of women in both the legislative assemblies as well as in the Lok Sabha and as well as Rajya Sabha, but I'm mainly concerned with the popular houses. But the journey of earlier women who were participating in these representative institutions was not easy at all. And though we have been very critical of dynasty politics so far, and you remember what happened in Nepal recently, there was a lot of outrage against Nepo kids and against people who were privileged, the elite. Yet, if we look at women's representation, I one section this was actually this presentation today is a section from my PhD topic, which was on political dynasties, and there I focused on Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. But here I would like to focus on women representatives, that how dynasties provided a route to women to enter into politics. And I am mainly looking at some of the blue blooded families, royal political dynasties. Of course, the focus is on two dynasties which are very prominent ones, Gwalior and Jaipur. Now, before and of course, I'm talking about it's quite evident that those of you who have read a bit of history about these two states, you know that I'm mainly talking about two Maharanis, or two Rajmata Vijayaraje Scindia and Maharani Gayatri Devi. Two contrasting personalities, quite different from each other. Now, in this context, I want to bring you back first to the context, the historical or the political context, what was happening around before we get into the politics of these women, how they navigated through in democratic polity. So we all know that States Ministry was formed and it was assigned the task of integration of the princely states, with Sardar Patel being the head. And he was assisted by a secretary who was a bureaucrat, VP Menon. And many of the details about integration have been given in his work, The Story of Integration of Princely States. So interestingly, the integration of Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, and I'm mainly focusing on these two states. I will mention a few more cases from other states, but I'm mainly focusing on these two, since both the Maharanis belong to these states. So if we first look at Madhya Pradesh, so Madhya Pradesh was also carved out the present in 1956. If we talk about Madhya Pradesh, Madhya Bharat region, and all, there were three prominent princely states that were combined together to form Madhya Pradesh as it existed in 1956. One was Indore, another was Bhopal, and the third one was Gwalior. Now, these two states of Gwalior and Indore had some kind of traditional, I would say, conflict. They were not they did not have friend relations. So it was quite difficult for VP Menon to negotiate to bring them into the Indian Union, and that also into one particular, as we call in the modern idea of province or state. So VP Menon quite states that it was the Maharani of Gwalior who played a very crucial role in enabling this kind of, I would say, this kind of union. And I would quote him here. This is from the book Story of Integration of the Indian States, 1956. I quote VP Menon. I also had an opportunity of discussing the matter of merger and all these issues of how to unite the states. I also had an opportunity of discussing this matter with a Maharani whose progressive outlook enabled her to appreciate my arguments. Unquote. So this is how the warring sides of Indore and Gwalior were pacified and they were brought into the Madhya Pradesh Union. And the Gwalior Maharaja was made the Raj Pramukh and the Indore Maharaja was made the Upraj Pramukh. These are some positions given to the erstwhile princes once they had to join the Indian Union. Now, what about Rajasthan? Rajasthan was carved out of 22 Rajputana states. 22. Now, most of these states were considered in the top hierarchy when it comes to how they were recognized by the British Empire. There was a position known as salute states and non salute states. So, out of these 22, uh, three were only non salute states, rest 19 were all salute states. Okay. So, in these salute states, what is happening? It's just a symbolic thing, but that was to recognize their higher position by the Britishers as a mark of honor to them. So many of the salute states included Udaipur, Jaipur, Jaisalmer, Jodhpur. So we will also see how eventually people from these princely states are going to participate into democratic politics because they were not quite happy with not that they were not happy with the democratic process, but they were not happy that their power was being taken away by something that they considered to be government of the commoners. Now, interestingly, if I compare the position of Gwalior, as I said, Maharaja of Gwalior in Madhya Pradesh was made at the Raj Pramukh. Same goes with Jaipur. In Jaipur, among the several princely states, it was the Maharaja of Jaipur who was made the Raj Pramukh. So we can understand the prominent position occupied by both these princely states in democratic state, or in a democratic India, free India, when they had to form union, when these had to be part of the Indian Union. This is the context that I'm building. Now, second important thing that we need to understand is how is it that, was it like from the very first election that these princely families entered into the electoral fray? Not all of them were interested, but one interesting case that I would like to cite, which refers to one male politician, male ruler, not a female one. and which is a much known story, popular story, is about the Maharaja of Jodhpur, Maharaja Hanwant Singh. And popular Bollywood cinema was made around his life. I wouldn't say exactly that was Zubeda, not exactly, but around that life, that people, that is what they feel. So, in Maharaja of Jodhpur, Hanwant Singh was very young, very fiery leader, a ruler, in fact. And when negotiations were on, VP Menon cites in his book that during one of the negotiations in a closed room, he got so furious with Menon with the negotiations, he was not happy that he took out his gun, his personal gun, and he threatened him. Eventually, things were pacified. Later on, Lord Mountbatten and others intervened, and negotiations finally happened. But the same Maharaja contested elections, and he won with great margin. Unfortunately, he could not see. He died in a helicopter crash. In his personal helicopter crashed, and he could not survive to see the results or to be part of the democratic process. But that was the beginning. That how from the very beginning, from the very first elections, how popular leaders were being challenged by the erstwhile rulers. And when I'm mentioning the popular leaders in this context, I want to draw your attention to, just give me 1 second. Yes, in this case, I would like to draw your attention to the some of the popular leaders of the Congress Party, or some of the popular leaders who were part of the Praja Parishad. Now, Praja Parishad was like a democratic association which was already active in some of these princely states. So some of the names that I would like to take of these popular leaders like Jai Narayan Vyas, Gokul Das Bhatt. These were some of the popular leaders. But how they were being challenged by the erstwhile rulers, and people still believed that we need to have trust on our rulers. But what was the context in which these two Maharanis from these prominent princely families, and I'm mainly focusing on Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, how did they join politics? How did they enter into politics? And I'll begin with the case of Vijay Raje Scindia, the wife of Maharaja of Gwalior. Now, many of the accounts that I have, the first, those are from the primary source of the autobiographical account of the Maharani, both the Maharani. One is Princess Remembers by Gayatri Devi and Santa Rao, and another is by Rajmata Scindia. So these in from these two autobiographical accounts, we also find that how these two princes were at completely different personalities. Whereas Gayatri Devi was very outgoing, very modern, very Western, who defied Parda. She was the third Maharani of the Jaipur Maharaja, whom she fondly called as Jai. And no Maharani had come out of Parda, and especially in Rajasthan, but she was the one who defied Parda. And we have seen her pictures how she was part of the polo matches, playing badminton and other sport, and wearing Western outfits, etc., etc. But on the contrary, Maharani of Gwalior had a she had a very traditional outlook, very, I wouldn't say conservative, very traditional and very religious. She, in fact, often when we read her autobiography, she often talks about her upbringing, and she said she was brought up in a very very simple, though she belonged to a royal family, but she mainly talks about her maternal grandparents and their upbringing. That though she was part of the royal family, but her upbringing was more like a commoner. And every morning or every time she would hear the chants of the bell when her grandmother, did worship puja. So she's mentioning that time and again, that how that had an impact on her mind, and that brought her close to that made her religious and also close to God. And she also did a lot of worship. And we remember her image. In fact, if time permits, I'll also show you some of the pictures. So, how did Vijay Raje Scindia join politics? As I mentioned, contrasting personalities. She had no interest of joining politics. She was like the usual Maharani, and the Maharaja was doing everything. Now, there was a very close associate of the Maharaja back then, Sardar Angre, if I remember correctly, and it was believed that he was supporting the then Hindu Mahasabha candidate. I'm talking about 1950s Madhya Pradesh, and the Hindu Mahasabha candidate was very popular in that region. So it was believed that somehow the Congress Party leadership got to know, of course, and Pandit Nehru was the lead. He was the leader, and he got to know that the princely family is supporting the Hindu Mahasabha candidate, and he immediately called up the princely state of Gwalior, and Maharaja was not around, so the Maharani picked up the call, and it was almost like an intimidating call, and he was threatening, and he was saying that we have come to know that your royal family is supporting, and we have made you the Raj Pramukh. Still, you are going against the ruling party, ruling leadership, and supporting a party which we do not like much. So, but the call was aborted. Before she could speak, she tried to justify her stand and said, "No, we have no idea about it. The Maharaja and I are not supporting any such candidate. We are apolitical, or at least we are with the ruling party, and we are just serving our subject, our people, and we are not concerned with active politics." Yet Pandit Nehru did not seem convinced, and he said, and he aborted the call. So the Maharani, I mean, this is all accounts given in her autobiography that I'm stating. So the Maharani rushed to Delhi, and she had a meeting hurriedly. She had a meeting with Pandit Nehru, and he said that if you really want to prove your loyalty, if your Gwalior state wants to prove their loyalty, then why don't you contest from Congress ticket? Why don't you become our candidate to prove your loyalty? So this is how she was. She was not quite interested, but then she had a word with the Maharaja, but then she almost agreed to it. And that was the first time that in 1957 elections, the Maharani enters into politics. And I would like to read a little bit from her. I hope it's fine. I'll read in between from her, from the work, from her autobiography. Just give me a second. Yes, and I quote, Vijay Raji Scindia recalls in her autobiography, I quote, improbable as they must seem, these were the circumstances that combined to push me into politics. What was that? I quote, a tissue of rumors. What were those rumors? Rumors say that the Maharaja's close aide and the Maharaja supporting the Hindu Mahasabha candidate in the region. Yes, a tissue of rumors. Second, a wife's anxiety to save her husband from the consequences of such rumors, because uh, the Congress leadership almost threatened her, saying that if you don't, then consequences may not be good. So, yes, a wife's anxiety to save her husband from the consequences of such rumors that he was lending support to the Hindu Mahasabha, and an abortive telephone call. So before she could explain herself fully, the Congress leadership had aborted the phone call, unquote. So she recalls in a autobiography that Nehru was skeptical of the growth of Hindu right-wing party in Gwalior Guna region and suspected that the Maharaja would extending his support to the Hindu Mahasabha as well as Jan Sangh candidate. So he wanted it. So he thought it prudent that why not capitalize on the social and political capital of the Maharajas. That is another strategy. Like we say, na saap bhi mar jaye aur lathi bina toote. So he thought that it's prudent to offer the ticket to Maharani. And this is how the foundations of the Scindia political dynasty begins in electoral politics. So in 1957, Vijayaraje Scindia, she contested election from Guna constituency. And 76% votes were polled in her favor. Can you imagine 76%? It's a great, huge number. And um, and later on, we see that she was again in 1962. She contests from Congress itself. Now, in 1962, after 1962, something interesting happened. A state party leader called DP Mishra. So there was so she had some differences and he was a Congress leader, the state party leader DP Mishra, very veteran leader. But there were some differences with her. So finally, she decided to, and she was not happy. So she decided to quit the party, and that was a right moment. And there were two alternatives before her. One was Swatantra Party, which is formed by C. Rajgopalachari. Now, that is another platform which provided electoral space to many of the princely families. And Swatantra Party, we know, was spoke about, it kind of opposed Nehru's socialist policies, and it stood for free enterprises. And many of the princely families which we will see later on, Gayatri Devi also joined Swatantra Party because she was convinced with the ideologies of the party. So later on, yes, I was talking about Vijay Raje Scindia. So she decides to started looking for alternative, and she was offered ticket from both Swatantra Party and from Jan Sangh. So 1967 was a very interesting case where where Rajmata Vijay Raje Scindia contested from both the parties. From In 1967, she contested from Karera Legislative Assembly. Karera was the constituency. Legislative Assembly, same in Madhya Pradesh, from Jansang ticket, and she contested um, from Guna from Swatantra Party ticket and not from the Congress ticket. And 1967, friends, we all know was a very significant period in a watershed moment or a significant period in Indian politics because that was the first blow, that was the first time that a dent in we see the dent in Congress dominance. What Professor Rajni Kothari talks about uh, the Congress system, that was the first time there was a major blow to the Congress system as it lost elections in some of the states and also um, it did not get the kind of number of seats that it was getting in Lok Sabha election. So in the same 1967 Lok Sabha elections, we see Vijay Raje Scindia contesting from Guna and winning again. Once again, she was winning from Guna, from Swatantra Party. But later on, she joins Jansang and she becomes, I would say, the backbone of Jansang during those times. And she also becomes somebody who starts financing the party a lot. She was a great person whom the party relied on for funding. Now, interestingly, how does she form a dynasty? So, her son later on also, we know that her son had to contest election, and she also introduced her son into politics. And around this time, what we see that there's a lot of opposition against Indira Gandhi, and emergency happens. And during the emergency time, this was the time when her leadership was forged, and when people started trusting her even more, and her leadership within the party was also going to be strengthened. And that was why this time was important, because emergency marked a departure. But before I talk about the emergency phase and how Vijay Raje Scindia got caught up into it, what was her role, I will again now talk about. I'll switch to Jaipur, and in Jaipur, okay, one second. So what was happening in Jaipur? Same, just like Vijay Raje Scindia, Gayatri Devi was also not very keen in politics, but she had her opinions. As I told you, that she was more outgoing, she's more extrovert, Western looking, and I'm so sorry, modern educated. So she was little unhappy with the way the central leadership was treating the princely state. And one was that how earlier the Maharaja of Jaipur was made Raj Pramukh for life. So they were to be made, they were to be to have the post of Raj Pramukh for life. But suddenly the position of Raj Pramukh was taken away, and the union government said that we can't continue with these kind of feudal systems or feudal titles. So she was quite upset with it. And eventually, we also know what happened with it to the privy purses. Privy purses were also removed by the Indira Gandhi government. So all these were, things were happening, and Gayatri Devi was keeping a keen eye on everything. But before that, how did she join the politics? So the story is very interesting. That she also got to know about eventually about Swatantra Party, and I'll quote from just one second. I'll quote from her autobiography. Yes, before that, uh, the idea that the princely families were the legitimacy. The idea of legitimacy is quite important in political science. We often talk about legitimacy. The idea that the ruling family of Jaipur were the legitimate rulers. No matter what kind of rule you have, whether you have democracy, whether you have monarchy, this idea was time and again being emphasized by Gayatri Devi and in her autobiography. So I'll read out one statement of hers, which she mentions. Even though Jaipur no longer had an independent identity as a state, she was talking about Jaipur in free India when Rajasthan was a part of the Indian Union. This is the time period. Even though Jaipur no longer had an independent identity as a state, the people of Jaipur still thought of us as their ruling family, unquote. So she's quoting that wherever they went, people would come and greet them. They would revere them, respect them, bring many gifts for them. Suddenly, so she said that people had immense trust, and if they had any issue, they would not go to the representatives, local representatives. They would not rush to their MPs or MLAs. Rather, they would still go to their Raja. And whenever his car, when people would run and rush and they would ask, "Hey, this is the problem we have," or even if someone gave birth to a child, they would come and rush and show it to the if the um, Maharaja was passing by, his karwa was passing by, they would immediately rush to the Maharaja and they would greet and show the baby to the Maharaja. So so what were the reasons that prompted her to join politics? In 1956, as I mentioned, the post of Raj Pramukh that pacified the loss of royal power was to be abolished. So that was a great setback because at least that was some kind of um, symbolic mention of not hierarchy but some kind of assertion of power by the princes. Even that was taken away, and that created a sense of betrayal amongst the princes. So Maharani Gayatri Devi herself writes, not only had the ruling party failed to respect the argument that made my husband Jai Raj Pramukh, it now seemed determined to isolate him. So she felt that the Maharaja of Jaipur, who is the legitimate ruler of the people of Jaipur, is being isolated. Um, so, due to strong disagreement with Nehruvian policy, Sri Rajgopalachari had formed Swatantra Party in 1959, and he was and so Maharani Gayatri Devi decided to join it. So, as she documents in her memoir, she never thought of making politics a career, not at all. She, just like her counterpart Vijay Raje Scindia, she was not keen on joining, but she harps on the fact that it was the Congress party and its policies, the Congress leadership and its policies that forced her to join politics. And she said that the party had become quite arrogant because it was getting majority. So I'm again quoting her. Is it okay? I hope I can continue quoting her. Yeah, because I'm focusing on her autobiography. Yes, I quote her. I had no personal ambitions, and in spite of my disappointment with the government, I felt no animosity to any individual. I thought that the princes should find capable candidates, back them, and help in their election campaigns to Parliament in New Delhi and to the legislative assemblies. In this way, I imagined there would be a sensible, non extremist opposition to the Congress party. With these ideas in mind, and a rather wish to do something for the country, I finally took the step of joining the Swatantra Party. She's clearly saying that she had no ambitions, but her only task was to push for the cause of the people. But and also that she was disappointed with the Congress government. So in 1962, she contested the election and she won by a majority of 1,75,000 votes. And her name was registered in the Guinness Book of World Records for the largest majority won by any candidate in any democratic elections in the world. That speaks volumes about her popularity and that also being a female candidate in Rajasthan, which was quite traditional, where people followed Parda, especially during those times. Even the princely families followed Parda. For her, coming out and campaigning was another task. How to campaign, go out to the people. Though, as I already mentioned, she had already defied Parda. Yet she was part of the campaign, and the way she and the way people showered their love on her, and her name was registered in the Guinness. That speaks volumes about people's trust in the princely families. And this was the time period of 1962. We already have had like two elections so far. This was the third one. So, okay. So, um, mm, what she says is, whatever the situation might be in the rest of India. Now, I'm quoting her once again. Whatever the situation might be in the rest of India, in former princely territories, people voted when they had the opportunity from a sense of the age old bond between an Indian ruler and his subjects. So we can easily see that, she's claiming legitimacy. She's talking about something that we have often heard of in political sociology, patron-client relationship, age-old relationship, bond between Indian ruler and his subjects. Mind you, she's still talking about subjects in a free country and not citizens. Further, yes, the actual platform was a secondary consideration. So she means that whether her princes were contesting elections from a democratic platform or whether it was a hereditary rule, it did not matter. The bond between the ruler and the subject remained, and the people remain, and people pose their complete faith in the political leadership. Uh, now talking about some of the electoral victories. I am again switching to Maharani Vijayaraje Scindia, and Maharani Vijayaraje Scindia, she won from uh, yes, she won nine. She was victorious 8 times from the Lok Sabha. She has been an MP 8 times. The only time she lost election was in 1980. And can anyone guess the constituency from where she lost elections in 1980? It's getting monotonous. I'm the only one speaking because I know that's the format. But anyone, 1980, that was the only time she lost elections. Otherwise, she has been winning across throughout. That was the only Lok Sabha defeat. Anyone, please? That was the constituency. I hope I'm audible. So, anyone wants to guess? Sneha? Rai Bareli. Rai Bareli was the constituency where that was the first time she was defeated in any Lok Sabha. And that was 1980. And she contested against Indira Gandhi. Now, look at the Indian voter electorate and how dynamic and how things can change. So that's why electoral democracy is very dynamic. Somebody who, which I'll talk about, emergency years, somebody who was being criticized very much for emergency excesses, Indira Gandhi, but she uh, defeated Maharani Rajmata Vijayaraja Scindia. Now, by mentioning this point, that was the only defeat in Lok Sabha, I also want to tell you that my research, whatever research I have done, limited I would say, I found that most of these princely families were comfortable only in their regions, only in their certain constituencies where they have been rulers. So so Rajmata Vijayaraje Scindia was more comfortable in her constituency, whether it was Guna, whether it was Bhind or Karera, all of these were part of or of course, she contested maximum number of elections from Guna, from where she won, or Gwalior, sometimes from Gwalior region, or Bhind. So most of the times, these princely families have not stepped out of their own constituencies, their comfort zones, which I prefer using the term comfort zones. And their family members also eventually will see they'll contest from those constituencies, whether it was his son or his now grandson. So they're more comfortable from contesting elections from constituencies which have been nurtured by their family members. So this is one point that I wanted to show that how she was though undefeated, but yes, this was the election she lost. Now let me talk about what happened during the emergency and what were the circumstances during those times. How much time do I have, Neha?
I
Uh,
think it's
if possible, yes,
Yeah.
Dr. Anushree, 5 minutes, if you could try to wrap it up.
Yes, okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, so what happened? How emergency was a time of break. So Yes. So emergency was a point of departure. Now I call it a point of departure because um, no matter what, how important you were, whether you're from political, whether you're from blue-blooded family or any family, most of the opposition leaders were behind the bars. And I would like to quote Angma Dejhala has done a wonderful work on in her work Royal Patronage, Power and Aesthetics in Princely India. I'm quoting a work, Angma Dejhala, Royal Patronage, Power and Aesthetics in Princely India, 2011. So in her work, she beautifully captures the how emergency was a point of departure and how women political leaders, especially those hailing from princely families, how they were being treated. And I'm going to quote from her book. Both Gayatri Devi and Vijayaraje Scindia were earlier motivated to enter politics in response to Congress-led governments in their own states. It was a traumatic time for courtly families whose private properties were falling into disrepair and were sometimes seized by the government and their private collection unduly taxed. Unquote. And now Indira Gandhi, Vijay Raje Scindia, she was a very interesting story how, she was going to leave the country and she had planned to, in fact, her escape to Nepal, or is what you can say, she wanted to take refuge in Nepal. Everything was planned uh, by her aide and by her supporters. But at the last hour, she changed her mind and decided to stay in India and face the consequences no matter what, because she was informed by her people that any time the police might come, you might be raided. And if you know, if we want to know more about the emergency years, one can read Kumi Kapoor. Some of us must have read it. Kumi Kapoor's The Emergency, where she talks about all of these in detail, that how opposition leaders had the even at during midnight they were being um, police raided their houses and they were being taken into custody. So she wanted to take refuge in her ancestral home in Nepal. She had her ancestral home in Nepal, but at the last hour she changed her mind. So what made her change her mind? And I'm quoting from her book. I could not bring myself to run away, seeking safety and leaving others to face the music. I, who called myself a leader, and who had been accepted as such, and who had been accepted as a leader by a large number of people. Leaders did not run away. Unquote. Now, this particular statement speaks volumes about her perception of true leadership and eventually legitimized her as a leader with strong credentials, someone who was just not spoon-fed or a privileged leader from royal background, but somebody who faced the consequences, whatever, no matter what, of electoral democracy, just like the non-royal um, leaders. Unquote. Yes. So, eventually, even Gayatri Devi was jailed and she was arrested in a coffee posa in July 1975 on allegations of large-scale evasion of tax evasion के आधार पे उनको जेल पे रख दिया गया था. And both of them were in jail and they shared the jail premises. And in fact, both of them talk about the traumatic conditions that they faced in jail. And in fact, in an interview, Gayatri Devi shared her trauma of being in jail for 5.5 months. So she narrates about the terrible noise in jail premises. Of course, they were, of course, we know that from elitist background, they had not even seen a common household. So, especially Gayatri Devi. So for her, coming into jail, and it was quite unhygienic also. So she said that there were noises in jail premises, and the food quality served was really poor, and it was almost like a bazaar surrounded by squabbling women criminals and prostitutes. This is what she writes in her autobiography. And Raje Scindia recalls her stay. She was a prisoner in Tihar jail, number 2265. That was her cell number. So she talks about that how Maharani Gayatri Devi was more depressed than her. These are some personal anecdotes that I'm mentioning. And she quotes, "It was the jail environment was depressing beyond words. Gayatri Devi, who was ill and in need of major surgery, had convinced herself." This is Vijay Raje Scindia saying in a writing in her autobiography that It was Gayatri Devi who was severely ill and she had to undergo major surgery, but she was convinced that she was going to die in Tihar, unquote. Eventually, we see that, just a few days before emergency, Vijay Raja Scindia was released on parole on health grounds, and Gayatri Devi was also released on parole, only on some condition. What was the condition? She was made to give her approval for Indira Gandhi government's 20-point program. Some of these programs were quite socialistic, so she was forced to give her approval for the 20-point program of Indira Gandhi, and she was also made to, almost given written that she will no longer be active in politics, nor is she going to criticize the government. So eventually, this did have an impact on the. This had some kind of psychological trauma. I would say this is my personal assumption that I feel that. And eventually, Gayatri Devi did not actively participate in politics. I mean, she did not actively participate in electoral politics, but she expressed her support for the newly elected Janata Party government in 1978. And there were news and interviews of hers flourishing where she's being shown elated at the defeat of Indira Gandhi government. So, what about the legacy of these people? We already know of the legacy of Vijay Raja Scindia. Her daughters are in politics. Yasodhara Scindia, Vasundhara Raje Scindia. Her son was in politics. Her grandson is in politics. And then we are waiting for the next generation to be in politics. And most of the times, most of these people have won elections, barring a few. Since time does not permit, otherwise I would have spoken in detail about Vasundhara Raje Scindia, her journey from being a mere party leader and the vice president of the newly formed Bharatiya Janata Party to the chief ministerial phase and then the chief minister of Rajasthan, and how she took out her campaigns, which were almost in ruts, almost being designed as the palatial Rath chariots. And um, then talking about Maharani Gayatri Devi, unfortunately, her own children did not take forward her legacy, but her step granddaughter, we all know, Diya Kumari, the Deputy Chief Minister of Rajasthan, she became the BJP MLA in 2013. So she joined politics much later, 2013, almost 12 years ago. And the same year she joined active politics, the same year she became an MLA. And the constituency from where she contested was a very, very tough constituency because there people there was majority of candidates voted for a particular candidate who was coming from a particular community. But despite being a novice in politics, despite being a first timer, she won from a record margin. Savai Madhopur was the constituency, and she went on winning. She has been winning since then. So, with contrasting personalities, these two women shared the commonality of challenging the mighty Congress party uh, in a polity marked by patriarchal values. While Rajmata Vijay Raje Scindia was an enigma, um, known for her austere lifestyle and religiosity, Maharani Gayatri Devi was a socialite known for ostentatious living. While Vijay Raje Scindia supported traditional beliefs like the worship of Sati Mata, the later, that is Gayatri Devi, defined conventions such as Parda even in traditional Jaipur royalty. Both these women paved the way for not just blue-blooded political dynasties, but also opened the way for women representatives in electoral democracy. So I would close my case here. There's a lot of things that I want to talk about, but maybe in the after Sneha speaks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anushree, for that highly engaging presentation on the trajectory of women in dynastic politics. Now I invite Sneha Roy to share their ideas, their questions.
Hi, thank you for having me. Thank you, and thank you for your presentation, Anushree. I don't necessarily work particularly on the topic, so it was enriching for me to hear an historical account. I'm not well versed with it, but what I am interested in, although, is this sort of performance of politics and exactly why do they win and why do they even receive a ticket from a party, and why are they voted for? I mean, why people vote for them? The kind of cultural capital that they own even now. So the kind. So I think for Dark, I had written a book review of performing representation when I was in my master's at CPS, and it was by Shireen Rai and Carol Sparry, and they talk about this, that when women are elected, they have a choice in how they want to be perceived, and also women representing people in the parliament. A lot of attention is brought on, like the deputation, the gait, the way they dress, and all of that. So I think in the royal women representing this case of it, I think I would want to steer it towards like what you wanted to steer it towards the end, like the contemporary phenomena of the people who are representing the royal families now, like Princess Diya Kumari Foundation. I mean, they have a foundation, but Princess Diya Kumari, who is a candidate from Rajasthan, and from the BJP. And I just wanted to ask you if, like, what your thoughts are on, for example, titles were abolished, as you said, and privy purses were abolished during Maharani Gayatri Devi's time. But we still see this reclamation of titles now. Like, we call Princess Diya Kumari Foundation or Princess Diya Kumari. So we reclaim those titles again. And what that speaks about, like, how neoconservative ideals of, that nostalgic element of going back in time, and how that, I don't know, like, connects with people traditional norms, that they still seem to be the rulers or the people who people go to. Like you said, that normally at the time they didn't go to the MLAs, or they didn't approach MLAs if they had a problem. They would approach the royal families. So are they still seen in that light in these areas? And does that hone some kind of cultural capital that they are elected in these places? Also, the other thing that I wanted to say, that like you're saying that they won by a large majority, and like it was one of the largest ever majorities that were reclaimed. So, what happens when, like, who are the people who are represented when such people come to power? For example, like, you have descriptive representation and substantive representation. So, whose interests are represented when royal family women come into like they win an election and they stand for so many women? And also, like, the new 33% reservation bill that was passed, do you think that there's always going to be a certain kind of women who represent women as a whole in India in the parliament? Like, do they have to come from a certain class, a certain caste? Because, when we're talking about royal women, they come from an upper class, upper caste, dissection of the women. But so are they really a even descriptive or a substantive representation of women or their needs in the parliament? So I just wanted to see it a little bit critically, because I mean, whose interests and what's up? Like, for example, you were saying that women voters have been on a high, and I just recalled Ruchi Tiwari's book, What Women Want. And in that also she talks about how when she did her interviews, she was surprised how women were more clear about what they wanted in politics than men when she was interviewing them separately. And they said that men tend to talk about more macro level, like national, international relations, how is India positioned in the world, this thing. But for women, because politics is so personal and it's the everyday struggle, you're constantly negotiating with the public, you're constantly negotiating with the state. How, I mean, Do you think when women are voting for women who are royal or who were royal at some point, do you think that they think that I don't know, like their interests are being represented in the parliament, or is it more about the reverence or the past glory of them being royal at some point? And even now, that kind of stature is held up because in terms of, I mean, we're living in a neoliberal India now, and there is that connect with people. Like for example, I am very aware of the Princess Diya Kumari Foundation. That's why it keeps coming up because I've seen it, and I've seen their work in the sense that they employ local Rajasthani women to showcase their crafts, and then it's sold, and then some part of it is used for the welfare of people. So there's this idea of business as well, in terms of or giving back to society through business, and that kind of a model is being implemented by the neoliberal state in India as well, like empowering women entrepreneurs and self-help groups, and the material aspects of it. So I think, yeah, the questions I would ask, I mean, I think I've made it too broad, but I would just like to ask it a little bit through a critical lens, in the sense that what do you think, who are the people who are represented through these women? And also, does it lead to substantive representation? Because it does lead to some sort of descriptive representation, but it's also very, like, probably 1.1% of women in India. But at the same time, they do own a lot of cultural capital. So in that sense, that, I mean, in a way that it's very similar to how when Bollywood-esque or like people from Bollywood get tickets. I mean, not they don't get tickets particularly because of their personal politics or their political fervor, but they get tickets because they have a cultural capital that that parties know that they can account for, and like they will attract a certain number of votes. So, do you think that could be a similar reason why royal women do and be, I mean, and they get a ticket from um, one of the parties, and they think that they can pull the crowd even now? Yeah, just thinking along those lines. Yeah, thank you.
Dr.
Thank you
Anushree?
for comment. So are we waiting for others to respond, like Chetna and others, so I can speak?
No, you can take the stage, and then probably if Sneha has something else to add, then we can have her say it.
Okay,
Hello,
thank you
Dr.
so much for your
Anushree.
question, Sneha. Yeah. So, see, there are many, in political science, there are many theories that talk about elite domination. For example, Pareto, which I think the slide is already there. Pareto talks about that how democracy is all about elite rule, elite domination. We have Michels, Mosca. There are so many people who have spoken about. But right now, I do not want to get into the theoretical aspect of it much. I will if someone asks a question, but I would like to mainly focus on what is happening at the ground level. And before I talk about these Indian political dynasties, let's look a bit in South Asia. And people like Mark Thompson, who had worked on Asian political dynasties, Mark Thompson in his work, and he calls South Asian political dynasties as hybrid political dynasties. And I would definitely agree to him on this because, for example, look at the case of Gayatri Devi. For many of these political families, they were all Western educated, English educated, aware of the Western lifestyle, modern living, but they also had combined tradition in their own lifestyle or in their campaign. So, um, so these hybrid dynasties, they have some kind of definitely they have immense social capital, and we talk about many of these princely families whose members have given employment to many people, and they have been doing it for ages. It was not just that the before independence they were giving employment, but even now through their heritage hotels, or there were so many schools. Say Maharani, there are so many schools that they have opened. So all these are not letting the people forget them. So welfare work and also traditional. There are so many traditional. I would say festivals, traditional traditions that they are carrying forward. That is also keeping the bond alive. Now, in Ramchandra Guha's words, are we going to, for example, he talks about Congress, the political dynasty in Congress as Darbari democracy. But if we really look at these princely families and how they have adapted themselves in the electoral politics, is very interesting because when they have to campaign, they also go out like others. They will also, meet people on a day-to-day basis. They hold meetings. They hold, um, and I want to draw your attention to the daughter of Vijay Raje Scindia, Vasundhara Scindia, that I was talking about how she won from won elections and she became the chief minister of Rajasthan. And then there was a Times of India piece, I would, yes, which says that the elitist princess is now a Rani of the masses. The moment she became the chief minister, this is what the headline ran. So even media also plays a vital role in keeping that memory alive that yes, she's part of the royal family. And yes, now there are few things that you were talking about women voters and how these princely families are going to connect to them. And I want to draw your attention to because latest Bihar elections have um surprised some of the political commentators, and they are attributing it to the great to the participation of women voters. And what there was a piece in and there was a piece on Bihar elections where Professor Ashwini Kumar and Chandrachud Singh they talk about the interesting model in Bihar started by Nitish Kumar, which they call as maternal welfare state. But this idea of maternal welfare state, I'll say it's not very new. And there was a scheme which was started in Rajasthan that was Bhama Shah scheme. Bhama Shah scheme. Anyone aware of this scheme? Interestingly, in Bhama Shah scheme, it was not to be, it was not the male member who was made the beneficiary. What was Bhama Shah scheme all about? So the scheme was basically um, to provide financial inclusion and for women's empowerment, and it was to give some kind of money to a household. But who was to be given that money? It was not the male head of the family, but women, the most elderly women of the family, was to be given that benefit. So that Bhama Shah card was for the most elderly women of the family. So this way, women were becoming beneficiaries of the welfare scheme. They were not just passive recipients, but active ones. And this also included Bhama Shah Swasth Bima Yojana. So all that was meant for, oh sorry, all that made women as the um, active recipients of the welfare schemes. Um, Sneha, what was your next question? Sorry.
No, it's okay. Because I think the questions were also really broad in terms of the kind of representation we're talking about when such women are elected to the parliament. Like,
Okay,
who do they
okay.
represent in that sense? Yeah.
I think they represent a broad constituency because um, if we look at the percentage of votes share that they get, and they do represent a large constituency because people relate to them not because they belong to certain caste, religion, community, but they revere to them as their Maharani or as their Maharaja. If we look at the Scindia family chart graph, I'm sorry I should have shown that PPT, but right now, as I told, there was some glitch in my laptop, so I couldn't. Uh, Anyways, I'll just talk about it. If we look at the graph of the Scindia family itself, uh, you will find very few cases where they have been defeated in elections. Only one time Vijay Raje Scindia lost election. One time, once or twice, I think Vasundhara Raje lost election, and only once, if I'm correct, Jyotiraditya Scindia lost election when he was contesting from same Guna constituency in 2019, but from a Congress ticket. But these are some exceptions. But most of the cases, they have won elections because people in those regions have a trust on them because, as I told you, their social capital. They can relate to them because of the age-old bond. But what about the youth, the young people? Now the question is now the young people know now the traditional their grandparents may no longer be there. What about the young voters? Are they still voting for them? So the answer is in yes. The young voters are also still voting for them, but only in their constituencies. So moving beyond their constituency is not they do not uh, I don't think they will be electorally successful if they go beyond their constituencies, their nurtured family constituencies. This is something that I, yes, please, Neha.
Yeah, no, I think that what I was trying to hint at, not really the demographics who support this, but in the sense like what their politics is. For example, if let's say we know that Vijayaraj Scindia, she kind of supported the demolishing of Babri Masjid, right? Like she would also side with the party. So I was talking about the kind of politics that they represent, and that also caters to a certain population in their constituency. So in terms of their personal politics and the politics they perform in the parliament, what kind of representation is shown, because that's not the case for all women parliamentarians. And in the book also, the one which I reviewed, they talk about her, and they talk about the fact like this the other book by Tarini Vedi, who talks about like the dashing women of Shiv Sena, and how sometimes women embody patriarchal sort of essences to come across as not really reclaiming their identity as a woman, but just a worker in a gendered institution like the parliament. So I was trying to hint at like what kind of recognition does this give in terms of women's politics in the parliament. And yeah, that's where I was trying to like I was trying to understand that myself through your presentation as well. But also in the sense that there are so many ways that we can, I mean, women in the parliament can perform politics, but there's a very specific way royal women do it, and I'm sure like the two personalities that you've contrasted, they perform politics very differently, even from each other. So it's yeah. So I was just trying to hint towards that. Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you for that remark, Jigyasa, as to something. But I'll just I'll respond to you. You're right that when we talk about, as I already mentioned, that these were two contrasting personalities. And as far as Vijay Raje Scindia is concerned, Rajmata Vijay Raje Scindia is concerned, as she was fondly called, she was very clear about her politics. She was quite religious. She was quite traditional, and she did not join Congress out of choice. So one must understand that her inclination, she was not finding the right kind of platform, I would say. She did not, that she joined Congress out of her joining Congress was an accident. And the moment she got an opportunity to find an alternative to Congress, both Swatantra Party was also available and Jan Sangh, she immediately switched. So definitely her politics was quite different. She, as I told you, she was also a supporter of Sati Mata, and some people criticized her that why are you supporting a practice? Even her daughter, she was criticized for visiting the Sati Mata temple. Why you supporting a practice? So definitely these are some of the yes. So these are some of the issues that were flagged off, but that depends on the party that you're part of. And she chose to be part of the Jansang and later on Bharatiya Janata Party because that was closer to what she believed in. But Gayatri Devi was was different, I would say. Um, I did not find any reference where she has been supporting such kind of politics. In fact, her stint in politics, active electoral politics, was much shorter than Rajmata Vijay Raje Scindia. So therefore, it would not be very fair to say maybe had she continued further, we don't know what kind of would have emerged. But she was trying to be more inclusive in her politics, and and trying to bring in some more reforms in her area, doing some welfare and development projects in her area. And you know about Maharani Gayatri Devi School, how she opened the school, and later on when she was not active in politics, she said that she concentrated more on her school, Maharani Gayatri Devi School. And that school, as if I don't know if some of you might have studied there, or maybe some of your relatives might have studied there, I don't know, but they still follow the traditional royal roots, and their references are Maharanis and all that. So they still continue with it even today. Yes, I think Jigyasa wanted to say something.
Hi, I hope I'm audible. Am I? Hello?
Yes,
Yes,
yes, you're audible.
All right. Thank you so much, both Dr. Anushree and Sneha, for your very interesting and I would rather say very to me it seems that both the presentations were like two different cloudscapes, if you allow me that phrase. Two different cloudscapes in terms of the kind of perhaps questions or concerns that both speakers posed. And maybe because I was in a non-network zone, and if you'd allow, especially Chetana here, who's our moderator, if she'd allow me a couple of seconds to kind of, move my question through the story that has been woven so far, which is that there seems to be a certain way in which erstwhile royal families, because of the higher status and elite status, but elite not only in the sense of how we understand elites, and if you allow me, Anushree, not just in the elite sense that Pareto and Muska speak of, but elite in a sense that also takes into consideration erstwhile royal status. Um, that there's a certain legacy that these families had in terms of being situated away from and on a pedestal higher than the masses, and therefore the descent of erstwhile royals, erstwhile sparkling sacred royals who were at some point even in terms of monarchy understood to be blue blood because they were understood to be people who had some connection with God themselves, the divine theory of power that we're all aware of. I think the fact that there was a the descending status of erstwhile gods or children of gods to masses. And I think the possibility of democratic politics after 47, especially in the way that representation was reimagined uh, um, as something more accessible and something more related to the masses. I think there's been this spectacular support for erstwhile royals, not just women, but I think all royal families. And I would give Bharatpur as an example, where even now the candidate, the Jaj Raja, in the small constituency of Deeg in Bharatpur, is referred to as the Raja, and it doesn't matter whether he contests or his family contests from Congress or from BJP or from the local politics. He will win, and he's the Raja, and that's the vote he gets. He gets the vote because of his royal status and not because of what the politics of the particular party is. And perhaps I think that is the kind of conversation I think our speaker here, Dr. Anushree, tried to present for us as to what was that transition and what was at work for most royal families, and in this case, these two women from royal descent. I think with the question of representation, where the departure is, where I think the significant moment of 47, 48 is, where erstwhile royals, blue-blooded, uh, distanced and on higher pedestal families came down to the status of the masses to both become their rulers in a sense that they understood in terms of subjectivity, but also sharing equal status as in the unilateral franchise scheme. And I think that's where our discussant Sneha's queries, concerns, and questions I felt were situated. But I think she was asking about the questions not of procedural democracy or procedural status of representation, but the substantive bit of it as to what is the substance of such representation. How does erstwhile royal families who were Rajamatas or who were Dev Matas, who were Ranis and Maharanis and Patranis, becoming members of parliament and members of legislative assemblies as any other member. So I think that transition is something that probably opens up the scope of and the possibilities of democracy in the country, and maybe that has some implications for how we understand women representation today. I think that is what I understood was perhaps what Sneha was, trying to hint at. And now comes my, I truly sticking truly to that annoying question, annoying person in the audience who makes a separate presentation under the garb of asking a question. And this question is for both the discussant as well as the speaker, which is that from moving on from here, how do you see the possibility or the promise of transformative constitutionalism and the promise of transformative democracy? How do you see both these promises working out in the backdrop of representation for women coming from erstwhile uh, royal family? Thank you so much, Chetna, and everybody else for allowing me this long, comment garbed under a question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jigyasa. Sneha, may I respond? Yeah.
I'll go after you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jigyasa. There was slight disturbance, but I could get something from the last comment that you made. Um, as far as the transition is concerned, I would talk about that factor later on. But um, the kind of constituencies that these women represent, or these royal families, let me talk a little broader, not just about these royal-blooded female politicians, but also male politicians. That how is it that women from royal families have been able to? Is it only because of this traditional ties of reverence, or what Max Weber talks about charisma? What is it? Or patrimonial ties? What is it? So I believe that there have been many examples. It was not just Jaipur or Gwalior, but there have been several other examples, be it Bharatpur, be it Jodhpur. And I want to here state one case of Bikaner constituency. Why is it important? Because, and how these royal female, I would say, they have also been asserting themselves in a male dominant polity. It was not easy for a woman, even from a royal background, to assert herself. And that was the case in point. I want to talk about Bikaner constituency. So in Bikaner constituency, before that, before independence, there was one Maharaja named Ganga Singh. I'm sure you must have heard the name of Ganga Singh. He did a lot of welfare work there, and he was close to the Britishers also. And he started irrigation system over there. So, so he was able to mitigate the water crisis in the Bikaner region. So people remembered him for a long, long time for averting water crisis in the region, for being able to solve it. So later on, his son contested elections, and he became sorry he was an MLA in the region, Bikaner region, for 5 consecutive terms since the first elections. 1952 से लेके 5 बार लगातार वो वहां के MLA रहे बीकानेर से, डॉक्टर करनी सिंह. And um, so what do we think? He was the grandson of Ganga Singh, which means that people still remember. It's not just reverence, but people still remember the good work or the welfare work being done by these people. So I would again go back to Maharani Gayatri Devi, where she says, no, it doesn't matter for the people what platform we are contesting from, because it was not just um, that psychological aspect, but also the kind of work they have done for the people, and they still continue doing. Through their several, they have opened schools, hospitals, or even their hotels, which are giving employment to so many people. So that is how people remember them, that they have done a lot of work for us. And Siddhi Kumari, now why did I bring in Bikaner constituency? Because another female from royal constituency, Siddhi Kumari, I'm sure you're aware of Siddhi Kumari. She was quite young when she was brought into politics. And who brought her into politics? It was Vasundhara Raje. In fact, people credit Vasundhara Raje for bringing in Diya Kumari also into politics. Even Siddhi Kumari, when she was just 35, she was brought into politics, and there were many oppositions to her. Many of the local party members did not want her to contest. Um, there was the district working committee of BJP. They said, no, no, we don't want her to be here. We are not happy with her. We don't want her to contest elections. But despite that, she defied all the. So you can somewhere say that how some of these royal princely leaders have also asserted themselves. You may call it undemocratic, but this is how it is. That she did not listen to the local district. That Vasundhara Raje did not listen to the local district working committee of the BJP, and brought Siddhi Kumari into politics and made her contest elections, and she was given and she in fact won election from Bikaner. So this is how people remember. And second thing, I would not say that they do not appeal just like other politicians. They do also appeal to their voters. Uh, their appeal is based on kinship ties also. For example, if you listen to Vasundhara Raje or others, they will say, मैं थारी बेटी हूँ राजपूताना की बेटी, and they will say, मैं like Vasundhara Raje was married into the Dholpur family. So there she will say कि मैं आपके, and the Dholpur family comes from Deswali tribe of Jats. So she does refer that. वहां पे जाएंगी तो वो बोलेंगी मैं यहाँ की बहू हूँ, मैं जाटों की बेटी हूँ. And then when she goes back to her, I mean the original constitution say तो मैं सिंधिया की बेटी हूँ. So they do make these references on and off. So just like other politicians, they are also using these ties to entice the voters. But as I told you, I mean, case in point being Diya Kumari, despite the fact that a major, um, despite the fact that her opponent was from a particular community, and he had, and most of the voters, majority of the voters were from that community, yet they did not elect that veteran leader. They elected Diya Kumari from Savai Madhopur back then in a very first election, 2013. So that proves the point that people are still giving uh, preference to their leaders from erstwhile families, and especially when it is a female candidate, female ruler.
Mm. Would you like me to come in,
Yes, and
Chetna?
one more thing. I'm so
Sure,
sorry, Sneha.
sure.
I just wanted to, yes. And in
Okay.
response to Jigyasa, she was saying that, how they have this uh, preference for their titles. They still want to be referred to as Maharaja, Maharani. That's quite true. And I want to talk about one instance from Maharani Gayatri Devi's life, where she herself narrates it in her autobiography. Maharani Gayatri Devi had to renew her passport, and that was the time when her husband had just passed away. Maharaja Jai Singh, referred to as Maharaja Man Singh too, he had passed away due to an illness and after an accident in a polo match. So after he passed away, the passport office simply wrote, late wife of late husband, late Jai Singh. Okay, this is what was written in the column of husband. So she wrote back to the passport office and saying that please, I want a correction in the name. Do not simply write Jai Singh, write Maharaja Jai Singh, despite the fact that the titles were already abolished. Even his post of Raj Pramukh was abolished long back in 1956-57. Yet in 1970-71, when I think 71, she was renewing her passport, and she insisted on inclusion of the prefix Maharaja before the name of her late husband. So I mean, she said that that was important to me because when he was still a Maharaja. So that is what I wanted to say. Yes, please continue, Sneha.
Sorry. Sorry. No, yeah, I just wanted to come and reflect a little bit on Jigyasadi's question on how such representation will matter in terms of transformative democracy or transformative representation. And this will go beyond the conventional and the descriptive representation of women in the parliament and what kind of politics they embody in terms of the personal politics they showcase. Like, for example, if 33% of women and one third of the parliament is represented when women, I mean, the fact that this is even a question now when 50 there's, in terms of the demographics, we're half, we are pretty much 50% of the population, and even now we have to fight for like one third of being represented in the Indian parliament. That too, it's even now only most women, except for the reserved constituencies where only a certain caste can stand for election. Apart from that, it's mostly the upper class and the upper caste who represent interests. For me specifically, the this sort of royal women and their heritage, and I'm pretty sure, like, I mean, I don't blame anyone, but in the sense that like Anushree brought up the Bihar elections, and we saw like Maithili, like she's an influencer winning the election, and the fact that we're still voting for figures who do not, in the sense, embody a women's politics, but on the basis of fame, on the basis of, I don't know, popularity, uh, ensures that we will never see a transformative representation or transformative democracy. I think we as people, I think we are responsible when it comes to seeing a transformative change in the Indian Parliament. And really question, and of course that goes back to education, that goes back to like access to information in general. I think I speak from a position of immense privilege that I have had in terms of gaining the cultural capital or in terms of academia, and being in a place like JNU, or even in now in a place like Geneva, where I constantly meet people and converse with people and talk about politics, and that makes me a person who has immense privilege to do that. Not every day of women doesn't look like that. They are negotiating with their family, with their workplaces, with literally every step they take in the public sphere. So I think transformation will come when such interests are represented in the parliament. Um, not specifically like the show we put on in terms of the performance. I mean, we're living in a world where we're competing and the performance is basically everything. Even as academics, we perform a certain kind of I don't know, like an academic reverence or whatever. All the constant posts on LinkedIn, and I'm also a part of that system. I recognize that. But I think in the bigger sense of the parliament, that kind of performance becomes even more, I don't know, like evident in that sense. But we as people who are educated in such institutions can recognize it. But most people who don't have that privilege to think and stop and think about their politics, or debate about it, because just the weight of living every day and the politics of every day is so much that I think. And also elections in India is just it's more like a festival. It's a different kind of ball game from any other part of the world. So it's evident how such figures do find themselves being elected, because it's also an escape from their everyday realities. Like standing in lines to vote that day is an escape for a migrant worker, a person who's going for daily wage labor. It's not my position to say that who do we vote for, but I also think that the fact that I speak from privilege, and the fact that we are in a place like this, in terms of where we are discussing things like that, we have that kind of duty to question things. And we, in terms of transformation of representation and transformative democracy, I think the first step would be to have the privilege to question, and also uh, elect your personal politics, and not on the basis of a certain title or a certain kind of cultural social capital that any of the represented people hold. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sneha. Dr. Anushree, I see you raised your hand. Could I please request you to keep your comments brief, maybe a minute or two, so that we can move
Yes,
to the participants asking questions?
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you,
Thank you so
Sneha, for
much.
your.
I'm so sorry. Thank
No,
you.
no, that's okay. Thank you, Sneha, for your response. I would slightly disagree because I believe that people have a tendency, general voters, human psychology, to relate to certain faces. Like we talk about capital, and Brian Fenston, he did a study of U.S. elections, and he spoke about something called brand factor, brand value, which we talk about product. Same goes with politicians, with leaders, because it is easily you see somebody. Maithili Thakur is a well-known face in many of the North Indian households, especially in Bihar. She's not just an influencer; she's a singer. So, and she's been singing those bhakti songs and all. The household name. So people could relate to her. Mithila ki beti. This is how people relate to her. And you were rightly saying that how long are we going to vote for people who are just these celebrities, as we rightly mentioned. But it is not to say that they are unassailable. There have been many people now, and I would say that voters are quite smart. There have been many people who have won election, but they have also lost elections eventually, and they can't just remain a celebrity. Once voter feels that he or she is not doing something good, they will not choose him or her in the next elections. And I'll just quickly talk about. I would like to correct myself. One quick minor correction. I was just reminded of 1960s elections. I said that Gayatri Devi's granddaughter, step great granddaughter, Diya Kumari, participated in electoral process. Before that, no one did. But I would correct myself. Her stepson and her son, and whom she fondly called as Joe and Pat, they also contested election. They were very young when they were made to contest elections. 67, I believe. But they won elections. Let me tell you, they both of them won elections. So there were three members, representatives from the same family, Gayatri Devi family, who won elections. But let me tell you, they were only one timers. Rest two of them, her son and stepson, they they discontinued from electoral politics next time. They did not contest further, which means not all the politician will have that kind of what I would say charisma or the zeal to continue into politics, because it is not easy, because Kanchan Chandra, in her book on dynasty politics, and Amrita Basu has a chapter. You were referring to some other work. So Amrita Basu has a chapter, and I would respond to Sneha. She clearly says that if dynasties have helped get women elected, they have not determined the policies that women MPs have pursued in office. So I totally agree to it. But my counter is people like Vasundhara Raje, coming from royal dynastic background, but starting a scheme, Bhama Shah scheme, which I think was very, very important for the victory of BJP eventually, where she was making women as the beneficiary. So somewhere I think it's not just symbolic politics, but also they do bring about some transformation, whether they are royal women or women from non-royal background. And last response, or maybe let's take questions first.
Yes, thank you so much. If there are any more questions, participants can type them in the chat box or raise their hands. We can take questions. Mm. Okay, maybe participants are typing. Dr. Anushree, maybe you can continue. And if there are no more questions, then maybe we can bring the session to a close.
Yeah, I think they're all bored of
No,
listening
no,
and
no. It has
hearing.
been a very engaging topic. We had a conversation on both the perspectives beyond the
Yes,
spectrum.
yes.
Yes, please
But
continue.
yeah, yes, Neha.
Sneha had to say something. Yes.
No, I just wanted to say that no, I understand where you're coming from, Anushree, and also I also know that in the future too, royal women in this kind of a platform will necessarily get elected because of the kind of cultural social capital they own, and of course the kind of impact that they have made. That's not to deny any of that, but I think where I'm coming from is more about the future, like in terms of the transformation that Jigasadi had posed. I was saying that if in case that I mean, their politics can embody something like maybe a rupture, who knows in the future, we have no idea, and maybe it impacts women in ways that, like you said, and you're more familiar with the context, I'm not, but I can see in, for example, in the Diya Kumari Foundation, I can see people like, because they have given them access to a cultural capital, something that's sellable, like things that are made in Rajasthan, but they know that certain populations with a certain social cultural capital, it's made palatable for that population. And when we buy such things, that those people who need it, that money goes to them. So there is some sort of seeping in terms of redistribution happening in that sense. But I'm just talking about in a forum that is such as big as the Indian Parliament, as something that as women we look up to in terms of our interests being represented. I think like even not just royal women, but figures should who are just known for their popularity should not be voted, but should be voted on the basis of their personal politics. That's the side I was hinting at. Yeah.
Dr. Anushree, could we have your final comments?
But
Or
yeah,
yes, yes.
Jigyasa.
usually the session goes on till 5:30. So we'll unfortunately have to wrap this up in the next 2 minutes. So yeah, just that's just my little request to Chetna.
Yeah, just the final comments, Dr. Anushree could respond to Sneha, and then we could bring it to a close.
Yes. All right. So As far
Yeah.
as transition is concerned, I am looking at South Asia, not just South Asia, India as such. India, I'll include India as well. So I see that there's a lot of scope for transformation, and we are not just relying on political dynasties, but look at the case of countries like our neighbors like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, case in point, which were highly dynastic, much more dynastic than us. But what happened to these dynasties? Bangladesh and Sri Lanka for democratic polity, but what happened to these two countries? Sorry, these yes, in these countries, the dynasties were overthrown, and especially I want to talk about, say, for example, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka gave, just like India, gave three prime ministers from the same family. That was the case, and the party was United National Party, and the party was so dynastic, right from the top hierarchy till the bottom, that the United National Party of Sri Lanka was once called by people as Uncle Nephew Party. UNP was no longer known as UNP, United National Party, but Uncle Nephew Party, because of nepotism and family politics within the party. But what happened in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Nepal is a case in point that yes, transformation is possible, and people are not just looking at these celebrities or elite, as we call it, privileged class, and electing them in elections, but also looking for real change. What happened in Bihar was because women, especially, and we know that as many of the political commentators have spoken, that people have voted outside their caste and all, but the reality is people have always wanted welfare. This is what I feel. But अगर उनको वो directly welfare नहीं मिल रहा था, so they had no option. They thought, ठीक है, everybody is like the same, so why not vote for your own caste people, so that if there is some issue, we can go back to them. So, and that also direct benefit transfer has had a great impact. The politics of freebies have had a great impact to voters these days. And I was listening to, yes, I'll wind up in 1 minute. So, and the voters are also not, I wouldn't say they're very smart. If they find a better alternative, they will definitely go for him or her. If they don't, then they might vote for their own caste or community. And second thing, as far as new changes are concerned, yes, these dynastic parties are providing. I am not supporting these parties, but I'm saying they are providing a great platform to women in leadership positions. Look at non-royal dynastic parties, right from RJD to um, DMK to other parties. So many parties are giving space to women. चाहे अपना दल हो, RJD हो, या कोई भी party हो, they are giving leadership positions to women otherwise, which is very difficult in general case scenario. And second thing, I would just wind up my comments with this: elections in India is a very costly affair. The election commission has given a limit of 95 lakh and 75 lakh for contesting elections, so and so, and 25 lakh for smaller states. Yet we know that the real expenses go around 10 to 20 or 40 times more than what is allowed by the Election Commission of India. So, as long as elections are a costly affair, and these royal political dynasts or political dynasts, they have not just social capital, but they also have financial capital. So, despite their defeat, they will go on because of this factor. Yeah, please. I'll
Thank you.
wind up with it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anushree. Thank you to Sneha as well. I feel that we were able to tap into both the spectrums of this topic about how there is a need for transformation of dynastic politics and the legacy, and we also were able to sort of pay tribute to the history and legacy of it. I'm very grateful to the speaker and the discussant for posing their questions, their ideas. I think it was a very nuanced, comprehensive conversation. And also, much thanks to the participants for patiently listening. And we will see you next weekend, Saturday, around the same time for the next Baithak. It will be the 22nd Baithak. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for everyone for joining in.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. I wish we could have listened to you more, but it's already time, and I think the engagement, the discussion was so robust that kind of covered everything. So we have to bring it to halt. But thank you so much, Anushree and Sneha, for joining us, and we look forward to hosting you again in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chigasvi. Thank you, Chetna. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.